This is Monocle on Fashion, a show on Monocle Radio offering exclusive insights and global perspectives on the fashion industry. I'm Natalie Theodosi, your host and Monocle's fashion director. This week, I sat down with womenswear designer Rejina Pyo. Funnily, Rejina was one of the first designers I ever wrote about. We met over a decade ago in London to talk about her then up-and-coming label. Since then, she has become a force to be reckoned with in the fashion industry. Women in her adopted city of London and beyond keep turning to Rejina Pyo designs to update their wardrobes. They combine comfort with interesting modernist silhouettes and playful color palettes. There's always an interesting detail to discover in her clothing. A ceramic button, a puffed sleeve, an unusual sculptural heel on her signature mules. I could go on. The brand is also a vehicle for cultural exchange. Rejina was born and raised in Seoul before moving to London to study at Central St. Martin's for her master's, where she has remained ever since. Naturally, her brand combines elements from her Korean heritage with London's vibrant multicultural scene. As she discusses, when she founded her brand in 2014, maximalism dominated the runways. Still, she carved out her own niche by offering a pared-back modernist aesthetic and a mid-range price point. The recipe has proved to be hugely successful. The brand continues to go from strength to strength whilst being 100% independent, an increasingly rare achievement. Like every business owner, Rejina had to reassess her priorities post-pandemic. In our conversation, she speaks about moving away from the runway, investing in physical retail, and getting closer to her community. What's even more interesting is that unlike other brand owners, she hasn't been influenced by the external noise after the pandemic, sticking to her commitments and shifting her focus on maintaining rather than scaling her business. An important lesson for entrepreneurs across all industries. We also discuss Rejina's plans for a second shop in Seoul and her ever-growing passion for art. She takes art classes herself, and last year, she celebrated the brand's 10-year anniversary with an exhibition of 19 female artists entitled As She Is. Let's hear from Rejina Pyo.
So I was working as a fashion designer in Korea, where I'm originally from. And I just always had this longing for a bigger world in a way. And then every time I read something in the magazine, everyone graduated from St. Martin's MA with Louis Wilson at the time. So I was so curious about it. And I was lucky enough to study there. And I think I always had this fascination about brand. You know, when you're a teenager, you obsess with some fashion brand and, you know, it holds so much meaning for people. Let's say like BMW, it's like 3 letters. And how does it mean so much to people and what they associate with? And that always fascinated me. And then always another side of me, you know, like a legacy, but not in a fancy way, you know. I guess it's like a human instinct that you want to leave something that you existed once in the world. What have you done? So one day I wanted to do my own brand at some point, but I had no plan of it. And after St. Martin's, I worked for various designers more because they were very different scale to the Korean company that I was working with. So you kind of get the both side of conglomerate and the smaller studio. And then I was awarded for this Han Nefkens Fashion Award, a great art collector, and the Boymans Museum in Netherlands. So I was, I guess, lucky to have something to start my own brand. I'm not coming from business background in any way. I always work with my feelings and instincts. So very not strategic. So I think I learned a lot in a hard way, making mistakes. And I think British fashion at the time was a very daunting for me because it was all about maximalism, print, and more is more. And looking at that, I felt like I have no space for what I believe in or what I'm about. But I think one thing you learned when you were doing MA, Louis said, you do what you do and do it well, and there will be always place for it. And I think it is so true. Time comes around and the world changes. There's no way that I can change myself to be gothic punk or anything like that. So I guess I was lucky in a way. And then when I wanted to do my own brand, at that time it was full of either luxury brands or high street. There's nothing in between. And whenever, I speak to people, they wanted something that they could cherish for longer, but not able to pay for a rent on a coat or something like that. So it all started from very much from my heart, what I wanted and desired and how I could achieve that, but minus a business sense in that.
But still, quite quickly, I think you spotted that space between luxury and the high street, and you had price points that were really spot on from the beginning, and this really modernist aesthetic that I think for a lot of people that didn't want the really over-the-top maximalist that we were seeing on the catwalks at the time, it really resonated. And I wonder, your aesthetic was quite specific from the beginning, and it kind of blended your Korean heritage with a bit of Britishness and
Yes.
London. Was that something that you were always kind of clear that this is who you are and this is your aesthetic, or did it evolve over time?
Yeah, I think, when you're young, you don't really realize what your aesthetic is, but my mom was a huge influence to me, and she would dress me some like a dark chocolate linen dress to school when I was in like 10 or something, and kids would be like, are you wearing your mom's dress or something? I was always so different. And at that time, why can't I just wear like a pink nylon jacket? You would be so upset. But I think that really fed me to be different and stand for my own aesthetic. Obviously, coming from Korea to London, when you are grown up and you're like, oh, maybe this is how it needs to be. And, there was maybe the time that you're not unsure to integrate to a different world. But I think that kind of worked as a strength in a way that I could bring something from the other side of the world that became more universal and global in a way.
Yeah. And one of the pieces that I remember became synonymous with your brand quite early on, I actually still have a quote, is kind of the very graphic codes with color blocking at the back. And since then, it always felt like you were always quite bold with the way you played with colors. And there was this graphic influence of art. So tell me about that and the role that art has played in your work.
Yeah, I think I still love that quote. I think you can relate to like Ellsworth Kelly's abstract work so I was always inspired by fine art, whether sculptures or painting. So that's usually filling my research folders. And I quite like the way that I translated fine art to kind of functioning clothing. But yeah, usually people like you or interior designer or a lot of art people be spotting that influence. Yeah, I think just being true to myself, I guess. I still remember going to like a Basquiat exhibition for the first time in Korea when I was a kid, and I was like, oh my God, but now I realize how lucky I was to see that these things are possible, and it gives you allowance to be who you are. And I think when I'm designing, incorporating these kind of art influence makes it what Rejina Pyo is today. more special. So for the brand's 10 years anniversary, we were thinking of, you could be throwing a bigger fashion show or things like that. And I decided to do an art exhibition. So I curated 19 female artists, including my mother, who was very, influenced to be who I am today. And as well as so many other artists that I was inspired by and could not be who I am or the brand to be without them. So Angela de la Cruz and Chantal Joffe, and also as well as younger artists as like Antonia Showering, and who we share, I guess, the, maybe mere color aesthetic to how we see the world. And, I always enjoy those conversations so much. And that was amazing because usually fashion show finishes in 10 minutes and there's hierarchies of front row and second row, and it just feels like such a short glimpse and dream, whereas the exhibitions can last much longer. And I love the fact that it was so democratic, that you could have 7-year-old kids to 70-year-old granny. Anyone can just stroll in from the street and enjoy that moment. So that was kind of almost a highlight.
And it's interesting that you chose, you say how much more enjoyable it was to do an exhibition and to welcome all these different types of people, your customers, versus doing that 10-minute fashion show behind closed doors by invitation only. And it's something that you've really embraced in general as part of your brand. You've very bravely, I think, stepped away from the catwalk, I think after COVID, right? And have been doing these more interactive events much more. So tell me about that decision, because a lot of people have said they were going to do that. Maybe they did it for a season and then they went back to business as usual. So why did you stick to it, and why was it the right thing for you and the brand?
I think, I remember having like a secret group chat with all the fashion industry people, how we're going to navigate this, and we need to slow down. And
during pandemic.
And, that's when I think everyone could be really connected to what the value is, what is important. But I guess it's complicated with bigger conglomerates. They have shareholders and all the people probably breathing down their neck. Whereas we are 100% independent, no investors or anything. So any decision or things that we value, that we can really put it in action. And I guess the feeling I had, or the realization that there is not an only way, it's not a rat race who's going to get bigger or faster. I think the beauty of it is every business and brand is different, and they speak different way and different people. So I think that hasn't changed even though pandemic has finished. And then I think that, the fact that you don't have to go to work every day, that you can just work from home. I mean, now it's so norm, but at the time that was quite radical to break that social rule. So I think maybe that gave me more confidence and space that you can do things differently, and it's totally fine. You just get your job done, and you don't have to be doing the same thing. So, I mean, I still enjoyed fashion show every moment, and I love it. But it's not sometimes the best way to tell the story or connect with people. I think, when we opened the store, for example, that was after pandemic, and I think it was probably like the boldest thing that we've done, as a young independent brand, to have a brick and mortar store in the center of London. But that kind of shows you that how much it costs to do a fashion show just for a very limited audience, where you can't really buy this connection with your whole community of people, which is, I don't know, unimaginable now, having the store for 2.5 years, the connection that we built, and also the independency and showing the whole entire Rejina Pyo world to people. Because as you can see, it's not just clothes on the rail. We have furnitures that I designed, and, the art piece is always there. And we've just recently done this collaboration with Wandering People. Then, we have been selling artwork, actually. And there's a curation of books. And I think it's much more than just selling the product for us. You know how much I'm into food. It's a whole around 360 degree of lifestyle that everyone is enjoying and you can't live without.
Yeah, I think you've really maximized the space, and it's kind of like a case study of how to take advantage of physical retail, because except from the clothing, there are all these other elements, and you do a lot in terms of supper clubs and exhibitions and occasions that customers can come in and also just have conversations and interact with each other, right? Is that a big element of the store experience?
Yes, I definitely didn't want a whole white marble where you can't touch anything and very oppressive, exclusive experience. I think whenever I'm traveling, I'm attracted to these stores that have such a personality. And when you go to a friend's house, they have full of interesting stuff, and you want to see their bookshelves and wardrobe and kitchen, everything. So I wanted that kind of experience that you want to stay and explore and really feel it, but without that kind of a formal stuffiness. And I think we've done that because a lot of feedback we have, people just don't want to leave. It's in the busy street in Soho in London, and they feel so serene and, they want to chill out.
Has it helped you to get to know the customers that are buying your clothes, or for them to start to get to know each other? Have you seen those connections happening more and more?
Yes. I think these days, people don't buy just a product because they need it. It's more about the emotional connection and, almost a representation of I'm part of this community, and this is the belief that I have for this brand. I think it's much more than just a product. I have to thank to my amazing store staffs, the stories I hear from them, and they all become friends with the customers. So we really get to know where they're from, where they're getting married, and they have sisters to bring next time they come to London. And it's really kind of a continuous relationship rather than kind of a one-off purchase. And then we do customer-facing events, and we are doing kind of artist talks and things like that. So I think it will be more like a cultural experience that we can share.
And it's interesting, before you said that the brand is 10 years old, it doesn't have investors, and you've opened a shop just after the pandemic that has stayed open. And tell me, how do you think you've managed to do something that's quite unachievable for so many London brands and not get tempted to also bring in investors and open 10 shops and double the amount of items that you design in every collection?
Yeah. I guess, you have to count your lucky stars. I can't say it's all because, we've done everything brilliantly. But I think one thing we can talk about is that how we really try to stay true to ourselves, not comparing. I have this brilliant team member. She's also Master of Sustainability, and so it's also another thing that we've been working on for 10 years. And we don't have to scream down from the roof because it's what everyone should be doing. But, one day she said, how in the capitalism people just measure success by numbers because that's the only measure you can count on. But what if it's a company that people want to stay working? And, I have to mention everyone that I had been working together, who was my first ever intern. She's still with me. Another person, 8 years. And, everyone is so like a family now. I think that's another strength. But also, we were never greedy in a way, because I guess it's quite bad to not to have money as a motivation, having a business. But I think I'm not really interested in just scaling and making more profit. That's good if that happens to sustain the business, but having the credibility and the connection with people, I think that's so much more important to me. So, and I can see that small can be beautiful and great. And I don't need to be a CEO of 100 team members, just managing team. So I still design myself. I don't like it just having designers to do it for you, because that's the reason why I started. So I guess it's kind of
it's finding different measures of success. And also I think the ultimate one is that you're still here while some other people are not, that might have been scaling faster. So I think it's very valuable lesson for entrepreneurs in fashion and beyond, if they're kind of thinking of starting, whether to bring an investor on and how fast to scale. And I'm curious also, at the earlier on, you did kind of follow the system in a bit more a traditional way, working more with wholesale, doing the fashion shows, and following the calendar a bit more closely as well. What are the challenges with trying to keep up with that system as an independent business?
I think it changed so much. I mean, maybe I didn't know any other way to do it at the time. But I have to say it gave us global recognition, doing fashion shows and things like that. So it wasn't all bad. But I think having these giants, wholesale people going, and I can see a lot of fellow designers who are relying on that. The impact is massive. So that kind of gives you maybe the evidence that you really need your community and customers for yourselves, not relying on the big wholesale orders.
Because the investment doesn't always pay off, right? Or you have to wait too long to get paid.
I guess also it kind of often leads to overproduction and discounting, seasonal discount, which I'm not really fan of, because all the designs that we do, we have a seasonless, timeless in mind. So I guess, I guess it's really examining what you are and what you are happy with. I guess everyone is different. My happiness and my goal was different to maybe someone scaling fast and getting cash out and exit. It's a different agenda. So I guess it's good to know what you are about, and you can stay true to that, not following others.
We have to talk about Korea as well, because I think it is such a big part of the brand, a big point of differentiation. And I know you travel back and forth quite a lot and get inspiration from there. Tell me about recent trips and how Korea has kept inspiring you.
Yes, I'm so grateful and amazed how Korea is perceived now, because when I was leaving Korea 16 years ago, it was nothing like that. They'd be asking, are you from North Korea or South Korea? Well, I'm so happy and really embracing, because every time I meet people, they were dying to go to Seoul, and I'll send them recommendations. But the amazing thing is every year you go, it changed already. The pace is so fast. So you will feel like you're visiting new city all the time. Wow. Because I still have my family there, and so we enjoy Seoul, but also we go to countryside a lot as well, which I think a lot of people don't get to do because Seoul is so massive that a week, 2 weeks, you can still be there. But the countryside, 70% of Korea is mountains, and it's surrounded by 3 different seas. So we have amazing nature if you're longing for that. But yeah, I think it's, I was saying recently, even though I'm not from there, I think if I was visiting, it would be one of my favorite places to go. So I wouldn't say I'm not biased, but that's not possible. But yeah, the food, the people, and just, yeah, everything, the energy.
And what do you think is the biggest impact on the collections and your aesthetic itself? Is it a color palette, a silhouette? Is it more of an attitude in the way that you propose people get dressed that Korea specifically has had an impact?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Once I visited this traditional museum, I realized, oh, this is like the top that we designed without buttons or zip. It's just to do with the ties on either side. And then there was a bag that looked like a traditional Korean lunchbox. You know, without realizing you are influenced and it's somewhere there in your DNA. But also with the modern world, it really keeps me, you know, it's very smart, very detailed, very modern. I guess that part really speaks to me as a Korean person. I mean, culturally, it's very different in a way that Korea, you can go to wedding wearing jeans, whereas in UK, it's like a gown affair. So I guess kind of mixing those two extremes that makes maybe Rejina Pyo more interesting.
Definitely. And I guess the sense of ease in your clothes as well, and things always fit well, and they're quite functional, even if it is a more dressy cocktail dress.
Yes.
That might be something that comes from living in Seoul or going and then walking around the city, given kind of its dynamism.
Well, I guess you could say that because they wouldn't tolerate any nonsense. but I think it was kind of innate in me when I was growing up. I admired Chanel and Miuccia Prada, how they liberated women compared to other male designers who had their own muse, and just to see how they're standing, you know, the women might be suffering not to be able to sit or have dinner or something. So that was always in my philosophy. Can you sit down and eat nice meal?
So it's a real mix of influences which comes together, which is beautiful. And another thing that knowing you, I think, comes across in your work is that you're not kind of deeply immersed in the fashion bubble, and you have quite a rich life outside of it. Like you were saying, you spend weeks in the countryside in Korea. You're a big cook. You like to draw. Is that part of kind of what has kept you going in the fashion industry, and what makes you also a better designer in many ways?
Yeah, you don't think you're doing it different until like other people like you tells you, because you think your world is normal. But I think fashion world is so fast, and it's all about, okay, who's the hottest now, and then it changes. And if you're so in that world, I think it can be quite vacuous and, you know, bit detached from who you are as a truth of yourself. Maybe it's going too holistic, but in a way, I think, you know, fashion exists and it's more beautiful when it's integrated with genuine life to be enjoyed. And I really love that. And also it's the creativity that runs through our life. when you're cooking, you're being creative. When I'm painting, I'm creative. And, the way that you decorate your house, interior design, everything that we enjoy day to day is all from the creativity. So it's not just like a one-directional way of how it looks, how, it's all about the outfit or things like that. I find that most fascinating and interesting how people live, and the fashion is part of it.
And tell me about there's this exciting exhibition coming up. So give us kind of some clues about that and what's coming up.
So artist Munch, who I admired for a very long time, I think he's more famous for the Scream, that painting. So in Oslo, there's this amazing museum, Munch Museum, and they came to us to collaborate. So I made a special, like a patinated steel mirror that I designed, inspired by his work, and some artwork that became a really beautiful silk scarves. So it's like a small kind of collection, homage to Munch, and so it's coincided with the National Portrait Gallery's Munch exhibition. And then we're working on this big collaboration that will be coming in October. And we're in talk with first kind of a major physical space to be in Seoul. So lots of things in the pipe.
A lot coming up. Yeah, that's so exciting. And why? I mean, Korea, opening a shop in Korea makes a lot of sense. It's your original home, your second home now. Yes. Are you planning on doing things differently, or have you learned things from now running a successful space in London that you're going to apply in the new space?
I always had a more broad interest than fashion. So when this big department store came to us suggesting opening something, obviously they had the clothing in mind. But then I suggested, can I bring other things? So such as painting, ceramics and glassware and things like that. And they loved the idea. So I think I'll make a curation, a bit like an art gallery, but have a shop as well. So it's not just a typical clothing only store. So I think it would be interesting.
I mean, a lot of, it's a big topic of conversation now, this crossover between fashion and the worlds of design. It's something I think a lot of brands want to get into because there is more legitimacy, maybe more cultural relevance in this world. But I guess you've been doing it for a while now and are in a sort of the best position to keep going and to keep experimenting.
Yeah, I think people are being expansive and, realizing you have more synergy working together and there's no boundaries, I guess. And maybe that's the connection with the more creative side in every industry.
That was womenswear designer Rejina Pyo. And that's all for today's show. Make sure you subscribe and stay tuned. We have more big interviews coming next week. Today's episode was produced and edited by Lily Austin. I'm Natalie Theodosi. Thank you so much for listening.